Hello everybody and welcome to the War Room Underdogs. So the Underdogs, we do these occasionally, and this is where I pick out, I look at the lines and the favourites and see which fighters on the card are coming in as underdogs that I think might have the opportunity to cause the upset. Because who doesn't love an underdog, right? I love an underdog. I was pretty much always an underdog and it worked out well for me. So on this card this weekend, there are three fighters that I would say are pretty good underdogs. They're underdogs for a good reason. You know, I look at the matchups and I'm like, I can see why. But at the same time, I can also see lots of ways for them to win. I have a great imagination, so this allows my mind to wander. I'm going to start higher up on the card and work down because the last of the three is a veteran I want to talk about a little bit, who is an underdog, which it doesn't surprise me, but it's a good opportunity to jump on it. Anyway. The first guy I want to talk about is Brock Weaver. Brock Weaver is an interesting character. So he came through the Contender Series. He had a decision win on the Contender Series, which, it wasn't the best of fights. You could tell his frustration during the fight. Like he was talking to his opponent. He was complaining. He was trashing him. You know, when he did get some space, he was attacking him. He's got a very aggressive fighting style. He's got quite a lot of experience as well for someone at this point in his career. He's coming into this fight at 15-4. And I look down his record, and he's got some good wins. He's a tough, durable individual. There are definite holes in his game, but he's got wins by decision. He's got wins by split decision over the likes of Charles Bennett. Crazy Horse. The old school of you will remember Crazy Horse. Anyone that's got a win over him's. They've been through a unique challenge, let's put it that way. Charles Crazy Horse Bennett, his record at that time was 30-36-2, and my memories of Crazy Horse was him tearing apart stuffed animals when he got to the ring. We'll do a video on Crazy Horse at some point. The point is, Brock Weaver's been in there with some decent fighters, and he's done all right. And when he stepped into the Contender Series, it was clear he had a lot more to offer. He got signed. He got his UFC debut organised against Kazula Vargas, and then won the fight by disqualification due to an illegal knee, which you could see how frustrated he was. And what was interesting is, he was going into his debut as a favourite. Like, he was actually a favourite going into that fight against Vargas, which I would have said he was more likely to be a favourite going into this fight than the Vargas fight. But I don't know. I don't know how this stuff works. So who knows? I think this is a much more winnable fight for him for a lot of reasons. So he's fighting Roosevelt Roberts, who's 9-1. Roberts is a tall, rangy. He's a very well-paced fighter, and I use that term I use that term cautiously because I don't mean to insult anybody when I say it, but it means that he's very good at controlling the pace of a fight to a decision. That's what we've seen in his recent fights. He beat Alexander Yakovlev, who I think at one point was a welterweight. He's a tough individual anyway, and that was a good win for Roosevelt Roberts. I feel like he's a problem. I feel like he's a long-range distance problem that can take you back and hit you with a rear naked choke. But there are certain things that Brock Weaver does well: the aggression, the tenacity, the intention to close distance and hit you with something that's going to hurt you. I see that in fighters, and I don't see that in others. And I see it in Brock Weaver. There's an intensity to him. And if I look at this guy who's finally got his opportunity in the UFC, got onto the Contender Series, fought a guy that wants to cling to his legs for the whole 15 minutes. Then he got his UFC debut in spite of having a boring fight on the Contender Series. Got the win, but by an illegal knee disqualification, exactly the opposite of what he wanted. I'm sure he would have rather have taken a loss than a DQ win. It's just one of those frustrating things that it's like you get no closure. You want the fight back. So there's going to be a lot of tension, a lot of eagerness coming into this fight for him, and I think this is a good matchup for him to impress. So he's an underdog. He's my first pick, Brock Weaver. I also like the look of him. He's a bit of a wild man. Okay, let me go back to the card. So the next one is, and this makes sense why Hannah Cifers is an underdog in this fight. Mackenzie Dern's a big name. She's a talented individual when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The difference between the two is, I would say Hannah Cifers is the smaller one of the two. She is much more of a strawweight for this division, whereas Mackenzie Dern, she is She's bigger, she's stronger, she has more of a physical presence, I would say, when she's in the octagon. But I do feel like that can run its course. And what I've seen with Hannah Cifers, and what I saw Mackenzie Dern struggle with in her last fight against Amanda Rebus, is someone that's got busy footwork, busy movement, doesn't necessarily hit like a truck, but does stay busy and does stay lively. Because Mackenzie Dern fights in waves. Like, you'll see this surge and she'll just come running and sprinting at you and run you to the fence and then try and work some takedowns, and then she'll get a bit discouraged and she'll back off for a bit and she'll move away. Then her confidence will build and she'll do the same thing again. If she's fighting someone that's more kind of busy, more consistent, more tap, 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 more, kind of buzzing around you, it does wear her down, and she does get frustrated when she can't land or control. If this fight hits the floor, that's where Mackenzie Dern can potentially run away with this fight. I have seen good things from Hannah Cifers. So who was it she fought? Yes, that was it. So she fought Polyana Viana, who's got a good ground game, and she threw a lot of subs up at her. And Hannah Cifers was good defensively. She was aware of what she needed to do to stay safe. I was trying to think of an analogy that makes sense for this, and the only thing I can think is, like, you don't need to know how to build an engine to know how to break an engine. Like, if I'm building a hot rod engine, I need to know a lot of stuff. If I'm trying to make that engine not work anymore, there's very little I need to know about that engine to do that. And I often think that sub-defense can be like that. Like, you need a lot of skills and a lot of understanding of how to control a human being to isolate a submission and get the finish. But if you understand that submission, you just have to reverse engineer that. You have to go, oh, okay, you need my elbow there for the armbar, so I'm going to keep it there. You need my head down for this, I'm going to keep it up. You need the little pieces that make you problematic. And you only need to be problematic to a point where you can land strikes if it's MMA. It's much different if it's grappling. Like, there are a lot more opportunities in MMA where you can just bail out. I'm done, I'm out, and stand up. Like, when people are training grappling, that's two people engaging in a grappling match. If you go onto a jiu-jitsu mat and you decide all you're going to do is stand up every time you get an opportunity, they'll throw you out because you'll keep standing up. Like, there are lots of opportunities just to bail out. And I think that's what Hannah Cifers needs to do. She needs to be on her feet. She needs to stay busy. She needs to keep pitching that overhand right that she does have power in. She dropped Polyana Viana with it. And then just, if it hits the floor, either just get out as soon as she can, or just don't even follow her to the floor if she can avoid it. It's a very tough fight for her, no doubt. She has the experience advantage, though. She's 10-4 against 7-1. So Mackenzie Dern, I think she's 2-1 in the UFC. Yeah, 7-1 overall, 2-1 in the UFC. Hannah Cifers is 10-4 overall, 2-2 in the UFC. But it's also worth noting that her fights before the UFC were against vets, the ones that she lost. I mean, she lost to Gillian Robertson and Heather Jo Clark. So every time she's lost, it's been to a good level fighter that's then progressed on to do good things. This is a winnable fight for Hannah Cifers. She's a decent size underdog, and I think she has the opportunity to cause an upset, especially because Mackenzie Dern's now tasted defeat the first time. She might be, you take a defeat one or two ways. It either makes you better or makes you worse, and we won't know until she steps in there. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Now, This last one, so I've got 3 picks for you, obviously. You've had the first 2. This third pick for me is a much safer underdog pick because I know Louis Smolka as a fighter very well. He's been in the UFC for a long time. He's also been out of the UFC and come back. He's had personal problems. He's had problems with alcoholism, which have been very public, and it's been a struggle that he's been open about, and that he's admittedly has affected his career as an athlete. It's also something I feel like when he's on top of and when he's got control of, he is a very dangerous individual. He's been in high pressure situations. He's been thrown to the lions a couple of times. He's been he was, way down the card fighting Paddy Houlihan in Dublin and ended up being the main event, pretty much overnight. Like, Louis Smolka's been in there, been through the ringer. He's had some really, really good performances. I mean, he's fighting Casey Kenny. I don't know a great deal about Casey Kenny. He's got a decent amount of experience. 13-1 is his record. But he's coming off a unanimous decision loss to Merab Dvalishvili. And Merab's he's a firecracker. He's aggressive. He does like to keep a pace on people. I can absolutely see Lewis Smolka replicating that if he's in a good place. It's all about which version of Lewis Smolka shows up, but he's definitely got the skills here. I expect him to come out aggressively if he's on point, work for takedowns, work to take the back, and get that rear naked choke. He's got great neck attacks. And at 16-6, you know, he's at that point in his career where he's over that point of anxiety where he's got loads to lose. It's a case of just getting out there now and being himself. You know, he's tasted defeat in the octagon. He's had the ups and downs. You know, sometimes a fighter like Lewis Smolka, the victory is getting to the octagon in one piece. And once you're there, you can just be yourself and do the business. So they're my 3 underdog picks. You've got Brock Weaver, Hannah Cyphers, and Lewis Smolka. Enjoy the fights. Good luck. See you next time.